Hello, everybody. Today is May 30th, and we're doing government and security stories to share with your friends here on the L1 show.
We're fairly confident that you can't hear the fan that's dying behind you, but there's a fan dying. So
yeah,
the
we can
audio's
hear
terrible. Sorry.
It wasn't picking up in OBS, but no promises.
We're like 90% confident you can't hear it.
Yeah.
I am not 90% confident. In fact, I am not even 10% confident in my representation at the Supreme Court level.
U.S. Supreme Court declines to hear challenge to warrantless poll camera surveillance. This is crazy. They put it like outside some woman's home for like, was it 8 months?
Right. And well, poll cameras are pretty common. So you might be thinking, oh, poll cameras, that's just where like a high crime area, they put it pointing at a parking lot or something like that.
A public place? No, this was a woman's home.
This was someone's home that they surveilled, like you say, for 8 months around the clock. And they could watch it in real time. It wasn't recording. It was a live feed of this person's house that cops were watching at all times.
I like that this article kind of talks about how this person's like a lawyer and a devoted grandmother, a member of the community. And I was like, okay, we're laying on a little thick. I don't care who they are. They don't need to be surveilled without a warrant.
I don't think they were surveilling the grandmother.
Oh, was that?
I think probably somebody else in the house. I don't know. If they were a clerk, was this maybe the Supreme Court leaker they were looking for? They didn't give those details in here. All they were talking about was the Supreme Court itself, which just said,
we don't want to, we don't care about that.
We're not going to cover that one. That's not our job. Someone else can do that.
We're busy taking bribes right now. We can't be expected to deliver justice.
Now, of course, they don't need poll cameras. They could already surveil pretty much everything about that person. And in fact, they do, because we've had those facilities for a very, very long time. Technically, you're not supposed to do that to U.S. citizens. But
maybe a little U.S. citizen. FBI abused spy law, but only like 280,000 times in a year. Leaning Tower of Pisa. That's a good sub-headline pun.
Although I think it's pronounced FISA.
I still got a chuckle when I read the story.
So yeah, they point out this is supposed to be just for foreign surveillance. However, they use degrees of separation. So like if they can connect you to someone foreign, they'll drag you into the net. And they make excuses for it. But even with those excuses, these were not allowed.
This is the 280,000 that were still not allowed.
Black Lives Matter was a part of this. The January 6th
demonetized.
Oh, right. What can we do about it?
It was literally, like it didn't matter what side of the political spectrum you were on. Like they just surveilled everybody.
What mattered was that you were questioning authority.
Right.
So they're going to keep doing it. And it's time. This is 702 is the section 702 is the thing that allows them to do this. It's up for renewal. And a lot of the voices in this article that were critical of it were saying, yes, we need to make big changes before this is renewed. I didn't hear anybody saying, let's not renew this.
Well, yeah, why don't we just not let it happen anymore?
How about we just don't have that? If it's going to be abused and we see that they can't help themselves from abusing it, maybe not have it.
You've abused your power too much and now we're taking the toy away. Sorry.
Never seems to happen, does it? Well, the fan is...
It's gotten angrier.
It's into a new gear.
It's like the boiler snake, but for summer.
It really hates FBI abuse. It really triggers the fan. And the White House, they are getting in, they're weighing in on the AI stuff. A group of people who surely don't understand it, but they are looking for all the various ways that it can impact us. Now, this is one that I think is definitely a concern and is definitely already happening.
White House takes new steps to study AI risks and determine impact on workers yet again. Let me point out for like a third week in a row, a picture of a silver Barbie.
But Reuters just keeps using this over and over.
This is a different image. The other one, she was in profile. This one, she's staring right at the screen.
We've seen this one before.
Oh.
We've seen both of these before.
Why a silver Barbie? Someone who is the editor who picks out the images for these articles needs to tell me.
Yeah, it's weird. So this is not just the fact that AI is going to take all our jobs. It's the fact that AI, for the people who are lucky enough to still have jobs after the AI apocalypse, everything they do will be surveilled by AI and reported to their betters.
Used to train the AI to keep replacing more and more workers.
So they want to look at various ways to get ahead of that, as well as the fact that AI is going to take all our jobs. So they didn't lay out a lot of concrete steps, as is often the point here. They're just putting together a committee Another committee. We need so many of those.
And that they will probably be wined and dined by, what's his name? Sam Altman, head of OpenAI.
And robocalls. I will say my robocalls are down quite a bit. What's your experience?
We haven't had any for a while. We did get one. We got one at like 2 a.m. last night. I don't know if it was a butt dial or if it was a actual robocall, but it woke me up.
I got one actual confirmed Indian call center and one where I think the problem is the software doesn't actuate until you say something.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's a dial and it doesn't
You'll hear
always
it like,
catch
boop.
it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it misses what you say. So I got one of those. You can't really confirm that. But
Yeah,
I suspect.
probably.
Anyway, robocalls are an easy thing to fix if you follow the rules, but of course, no one follows the rules.
48 states sue phone company that allegedly catered to needs of robocallers. This is an American company. Their website's still up. I looked it up.
I don't think this accurately depicts what a call center of robocallers looks like.
No, but it's cute. There's only the 2 states that didn't go in for this. Even the District of Columbia did it. It was Alaska and South Dakota.
Is Alaska maybe not connected?
I figured
in the
maybe they
same
don't
way?
get as many calls. But it's funny that Hawaii went in, but not Alaska. Because I would think Hawaii would have that same problem.
In South Dakota, they're just so starved for human contact.
They're like, yes,
They're like,
please call
"No,
me.
Just keep calling, yeah.
Yeah.
Avid Telecom is the company that is doing this, and they showcased that not only did they ignore all this stuff, but they actually took steps to defeat the shake and stir protocol to prevent this kind of things from happening. So they were definitely catering to the robocallers. They also pointed out the percentage of their calls that was less than 15 seconds, 93%. So robocallers are making a living on a 7% hit rate just for answering.
Wow. Oh, no, I
about
mean,
that.
it's probably like the old people who actually listen and then get scammed, unfortunately. Very lucrative scamming old people.
Also, the currency conversion,
That
you only
factors
have
in.
to get 1 or 2 hits a day, maybe not even 1 or 2 hits a week.
Though I think, maybe I misread this. I think this was an American company.
No, it was the American company who was bridging.
Oh, okay. They were the middleman.
Right.
Okay.
So we could stop it
Right.
if not for these guys lying and taking the money. Also, they were in an argument with Verizon. Verizon dropped them totally.
Yeah.
Like
But maybe that's why we're not getting as much
yeah, that's
spam
right.
from them. Yeah.
Wow, Verizon actually did something for me. That's something.
Blows
Mark
my
that
mind.
on your calendar.
Yeah.
And Minnesota, we've been applauding Colorado, but apparently Colorado is still kind of dragging their feet. But Minnesota has snuck one past the goalie here.
Player 2 has entered the game.
Props to them.
Right to repair rules are now the law in Minnesota. This article kind of crapped on New York's toothless right to repair and then was like, no, Minnesota's is way better. But
No,
they didn't
yeah.
mention Colorado in here.
I don't think Colorado's done it yet. We talked about New York, and at the last
Yeah,
minute they pulled the rug out. Now this one also had last minute rug pulls, and this shows you where the real power is, right? What did they exclude from it? Well, the obvious one that we've been talking about for years: farm equipment. The deer stepped in and got some stuff done at the last minute there. Game consoles. Obviously, big tech companies are going to be able to control that. Medical devices, I'm sure that is a huge racket to service them and do all that stuff. And motor vehicles, which we already have right to repair laws about those, but I guess
Maybe they
they're
didn't
not
want to
as
override
strict.
them. Yeah. I thought auto rules were stricter.
That's what we've always been told.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe
Someone who works in that industry should tell us in the comments.
they didn't want to like muddy the water by giving you 2 sets of rules.
Sets of rules,
and you
yeah.
accidentally follow the wrong one. But you got to give parts and tools. You have to give training, documentation, and you can't stop independent repair shops from repairing things. It's pretty common sense stuff, but no one's done it yet. At least not as well as this.
It's interesting that farm equipment got removed.
That's such a powerful lobby.
Yeah.
Because there's only a couple of companies, and everybody has to use them.
Right.
So that's the definition of monopoly.
Game consoles is also like insane, but like I'm used to them pulling that kind of crap, so it feels less weird.
If you had to give me documentation on a game console, I mean, not me personally, but the people who are into this kind of thing, I would be able to crack your DRM in minutes.
All right.
So that's why they're so insistent on that. Old Nintendo
Salty.
getting in there. And here is the Surgeon General is catching on to something that people have known about for at least 5 years now, maybe a decade.
Oh yeah, a decade at least.
You know, it's not a new thing.
Social media risks for youth mental health highlighted in new Surgeon General report. They're like, hey, people are asking us if it's safe for kids to use social media, and at this point, we're not really sure, which translates to no, it's not.
As usual, 12 to 15, especially girls, really struggling with the world of social media. The fact that everything is fake and you're trying to live up to an impossible standard.
Yeah. People have pores.
At least
your makeup's never going to look like that.
And also, I guess it's whole like, you know, I'm not getting the likes that I need. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
I'll
never be that pretty. Yeah.
I can't get as many OnlyFans subscribers as this other girl. What's wrong with me? Montana, of course, took the big step to ban TikTok. Now, I've not heard too much about how exactly they're going about
Enforce it, yeah.
I have a suspicion that there are Montanans who are still on TikTok. There's probably a special group, you know,
there's like a tag,
an enforcement group,
yeah,
that's rapidly tracking them down. But they are also facing quite a bit of backlash.
TikTok is suing Montana over a statewide ban. Oops.
They say it's First Amendment. Now, this joins another class action lawsuit from the users of TikTok, mostly content creators in Montana, who are suing, saying that their livelihood has been threatened and their free speech has been threatened. Would
you call them Mon-TikTokers?
That's a terrible name. Wow. But I can't come up with a better.
Yeah. It's a small group.
Tiktana.
What's
Montauk?
Oh, it's not terrible.
Yeah. So TikTok is coming out here. They're bashing it. It probably is a violation of free speech. I mean, it's stupid to use TikTok based on what we know about it, but
their business model is pretty much the same as other social media.
And people need to be allowed to make bad decisions. That's part of freedom. Now, Google is embroiled in a copyright lawsuit against Genius. Genius is a lyrics website where they actually crowdsource. They'll take the actual artist.
And they pay for it, it says in this article.
Yeah, they pay the artist themselves. If they do it, they pay them. It's got to be almost nothing, right?
Yeah, probably not a lot, but they do pay.
1/1000th of a cent per click. And so they say because they pay for all that, that belongs to them. Those series of words and everything belongs to them. Now, they did something clever here. I believe it was Genius that did this. One of the lyrics sites in the past, they put little special characters in there. Like characters that look like the actual character, but are actually an extended character. And then when they went to Google's site and they saw, yeah, you pulled the extended character.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a smoking gun. So this went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court asked the government what they thought about it.
Google never agreed it wouldn't copy Genius's song lyrics, U.S. official says.
So that's not the Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah.
That is, was it the Attorney General? Solicitor General. Elizabeth Prelogar?
I can't read that. So small, so far away.
And she says, now, this is all about the Genius terms and conditions, which you don't, there's no pop-up that says you agree to them on the Genius website.
Right.
They exist. You would have to go looking for them. And she argues that because you can go to the site and you can see this information without explicitly ever seeing the terms and conditions, that means Google never agreed not to use these lyrics. I've never read the Nintendo terms and conditions, have you?
No.
And yet, I can be victimized for violating them.
Yeah, it's... On one hand, it's like, well, they're just taking someone else's content and then...
It's information.
Right. But at the same time, I'm like, God, can Google just stop getting wins against everyone else for a little bit?
But don't you think that's why they're getting the win? Because they have so much influence.
Right.
And Genius doesn't.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels, even though it's kind of like, well, this is a little goofy, Genius.
Now, if I started a website and I scraped Google's lyrics, I don't think it would go the same way.
No, that's true. You stole this from Google's chatbot.
Electric vehicles. Now, Chris, you were just talking about possibly purchasing a vehicle.
Well, it's not likely because they're very expensive.
Well, let's say next year, when the bottom's falling out of that, the prices, would you consider an electric truck?
For our area, maybe not, just because there's not anywhere to charge it.
That's true.
Yeah, if it was like, if we were just looking for a car, I'd maybe consider it, but like a truck.
Well, if you're in Texas, you really, really need to think twice about it.
Greg Abbott signs law making EV owners pay for their gas-free cars.
So it's $400 up front and $200 every year after that. And that's on top of your taxes, I assume, and your registration.
Yeah, it is on top of that.
Now, this makes sense because when you buy gasoline, you are actually paying a gasoline tax. However, in Texas, gasoline taxes are low because Texas creates gasoline.
I kind of feel like this whole law was written by gas companies in Texas.
Yeah. Now, they did the average, or at least according to Gizmodo, the average that a Texan will pay is $88 per year. So this is more than double of what you would expect
This was
a gas tax to pay.
almost certainly bought and paid for legislation by the gas companies.
I mean, we do need it, but
Yeah, I don't hate the idea in principle because you do need to be able to pay for your maintenance on your roads, but double what everyone else is paying,
it's a little much.
yeah.
It does discourage. We must not encourage or discourage. And I'm a big anti-EV person, and I hate it when they subsidize, and I hate it when they try to force us. But this is just forcing the other direction.
Yeah.
This is not a win if you're anti-EV. This is just a win if you're pro-authoritarian. And Google, as we know, does not care about our privacy. Not even a little bit. And they violate it, and they make billions, and then they get caught, and they pay millions.
Google reaches 39.9 million privacy settlement with Washington State. I feel like every week we just have more and more of these kind of headlines where it's just like so-and-so paid this amount to this government for this state or this nation.
But keep that in mind. Not just America, it's all over Europe.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. And then when they do their earnings, they're not reporting massive losses because they're still making more than they're paying out. And it's just the cost of doing business with them. So this is about location tracking. The argument was, I can go into my Google device and turn off location tracking and think to myself, Google isn't tracking my location. Not true at all. Google still knows exactly where you are. And in fact, they'll give that to the cops and they'll sell it to advertisers and so forth. So Washington argued, hey, that was a lie. But they're still doing it.
Yeah. They're like, oh, okay. It's like when someone, they have to pay a parking ticket. That's the thing people always talk about. Like, it's not really a deterrent if you're rich enough. It's like, oh, this is just the price to park there.
And Berkeley, a well-known liberal school, they have various international agreements. You got exchange students, you got research grants and stuff like that. There's
educational,
a lot of stuff happening worldwide. Global citizens they're training there, right? Unfortunately, one of those global hotspots is China. And even that, I mean, come on, most of the people of China, they're not the CCP, just like I'm not Joe Biden. I'm not going to blame them for that. However, when you try to hide it.
Yeah. Berkeley's 220 million mistake exposed in massive deal with China. This was a very long article, but the gist of it I got, at least in the first part, was that it was kind of like, at first, it was sort of like a loophole where you only have to report it above a certain threshold, and they didn't hit that immediately. Did you understand it that way?
But the guy pointed out that was false.
Okay.
Their argument was, well, there was a bunch of different things they did. What you're talking about is they built like a special facility.
Yeah.
And they didn't report any of it because they're like, oh, it's not done yet. But the rule isn't you report it when it's done. The rule is you report it like 90 days after it is agreed upon. You're not going to comment on the California bear merged in
with the panda? That is pretty good.
It's pretty good.
That's pretty solid.
I don't know what this is. What is this?
I think it's supposed to be like a blueprint to indicate that they were working on projects with them. Because you see how it's got the grid in the background too?
Maybe this is cropped.
I think it's just supposed to be like writing or something.
Not only that, but sweetheart trips to China for fact finding for the UC faculty. IP rights for stuff that was supposed to be public interest type of stuff. China got first dibs on the commercialization of it for research. And this is all research and, high level tech stuff. So something that's kind of important right now in terms of our Cold War. 220 million. China was
a lot of
dumping
money.
a lot of money into this.
Yeah.
They also gave them they had a chip fab research facility. They gave the Chinese a tour of it. And the guy was like, to give the Chinese a tour of that place, like you'd have to do maybe 3 weeks worth of just covering stuff up so they can't even see it, because that's how secretive that stuff is. But no.
That's fine. What's the worst that could happen?
And in the copyright world now, I don't know where I stand on this, because it's sort of like photographers versus artists, right? I wanted to get your take on this.
I think I missed this one.
Oh, wow.
Supreme Court rules Andy Warhol's Prince art is copyright infringement.
All right, I'll give you the
give me the TLDR real quick.
A photographer took this picture.
Uh-huh.
Andy Warhol painted this painting clearly based on that picture.
Right.
Andy Warhol's estate licensed it to Condé Nast to be used in their media. The photographer says, no, that's my copyright.
It's transformative, though.
They say not enough.
It's hand painted and or screen printed.
They say
the colors are dramatically different.
They say it's so close that it's sort of expressing the same thing.
I mean, it's the likeness of a person.
But this is not the Prince people. This is the Andy Warhol people. The photographer, I don't think is, he doesn't have any relation to Prince. He probably also licenses his work. I don't know. I would think if you paint something.
Yeah, it's a totally different medium. It's done in different colors. It's a totally different style. Like, it's not a hyper realistic.
Supreme Court went the other way. They said it's protected.
Well, the Supreme Court's been, getting bribed one way or the other. So.
You think the Warhol people?
Big Warhol, big art. Actually, big art is a thing.
They're buying Sotomayor's mom's houses. And in the EU, they are really just chipping away at copyright, or your copyright freedoms. That is, they want piracy to be just basically a criminal act rather than a
they want to kill you for it.
And they want to silence it before it even starts.
European Commission calls for pirate site blocking around the globe. Good luck.
They mentioned the worst offenders, China #1. And it's who you would expect: Russia, Ukraine, India, Indonesia. They did not mention the United States. They're very careful not to mention the United States, even though we are a piratey bunch.
A lot of, maybe I'm misremembering this, but I think aren't a lot of pirate sites also hosted in Iceland?
There used to be European countries that were friendly with that kind of thing, but the EU's been
cracking down on it,
really shutting that down. The EU also wants to put up rules for AI. Now, we've already talked about those in previous weeks, but the problem is the US and the EU exchange so much data, and they do so much work, and they do so much things together. We don't have rules, and they're going to have rules. So what are we going to do? We have to come up with something.
EU, US to seek stopgap standards for AI, EU tech chief says. They will not reach a standard, and that it will be piecemeal, just like GDPR.
They didn't hammer any specific details out, but they're just saying we need to do a 1 or 2 year thing, because the big things aren't going to kick in until I think 2025. So they're trying to come up with something in the interim.
Think how terrible things will get before 2025.
I'm afraid that will just be how do we keep AI out of the hands of the citizens?
Yeah.
And controlled by us. That's the big thing.
Controlled by corporations. Keep reading with this special offer.
We have to time this perfectly. I'll reload the page and then I'll switch and you can quickly read the headline. But so Spain has been it was Italy that blocked
ChatGPT.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Spain, they did something else, I can't remember what it was, but they've always been pretty controlling, pretty authoritarian when it comes to online communications and stuff like that. Now, this was a leak that, the leaks always point out exactly what they think rather than what they're saying in public. And they want pretty much to go scorched earth on this particular freedom.
Leaked government document shows Spain wants to ban end-to-end encryption. Oh,
look at the time.
That was perfect. I thought for a second we weren't going to get it again, but it came up again.
So, yeah, Spain, they have leaked the document. I would love to quote it to you, but I've been paywalled here. They just came right out and said, no, we can't have that. We must not. They don't like that was it Telegram?
Yeah, people can communicate without the government's fingers in the pie.
And Signal. And it's the old argument. It's like, well, you can have end-to-end encryption. You just have to let us be able to look at it. And people explain to them,
that's not how any of this works.
it can't ever work like that. When you poke your nose into it, it's not encrypted anymore. And that's just not something that someone who gets into high levels of government just doesn't have the mindset to understand that. It's like, what? These freedoms that you keep talking about, what are those? We can't have those.
That makes it harder for me to do my job.
And well, we had Sunak, who took his little helicopter ride. Remember that?
Yeah.
And it cost like $6,000. We had a couple of people in the comments. I assume these are like, bots or something. And they were like, well, he can afford it. He didn't pay for it. The government, the taxpayers paid for that. And I think probably the powers that be are feeling a little bit of backlash for that. I have a feeling this won't affect government officials, though.
No.
This is just going to affect you.
France bans short-haul flights to cut carbon emissions.
So if there is a train that goes to the same destination in a reasonable amount of time, you cannot just take a little tiny in France hop from like Paris to wherever. Nantes, how would you pronounce that in French?
Oh, we need Wendell here. Wendell with his hillbilly French.
Bordeaux, I know that one, and Lyon,
I think. I don't know.
Some of the people criticizing it, some of the climate people were like, "Yeah, this is really not going to do anything." But
if you're French, do you already take the train? I think most people probably like. I would imagine the train would be far cheaper than taking a flight.
Yeah, they point out it is,
and like going through security and stuff. Like it probably would be faster as well.
Well, the NSO spyware continues to be everywhere, and especially when there's any kind of conflict. Now, there were all sorts of guarantees. Remember, they were like, no, we don't sell this to authoritarian governments.
We don't sell this to bad people.
We're very careful about who gets this. Don't worry.
NSO spyware used in Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict report finds.
So this was all anti-war people, journalists, and so forth. They located it on their phones, and yeah, Pegasus. Obviously,
everyone's using it.
Someone sold that to Azerbaijan. I think Azerbaijan was the offender here.
Yeah, they were spying on Armenians, I think.
Yeah. Not surprising.
No, not surprising, but it is disappointing.
Could describe everything with that phrase. And Turkey, they got their hands on some spyware. Where did they get it? Well, we've traced it.
German firm accused of selling Turkey surveillance software used in attempt at spying on opposition. Turkey surveillance software sounds like you're surveilling like turkeys. Yeah.
The name of this company, FinSpy. Now FinFisher is the name of the company. FinSpy. Oh, the fan really.
Yeah, this fan really doesn't like that.
The fan has Turkish roots, or maybe German. They are actually going out of business, which makes me think that
it's a fire sale.
They accomplished what they wanted and they cashed out, and now they're going to let it die because it's, a damning piece of evidence. But yeah, I think they went through like another third-party kind of. It's like really, really.
Yeah.
Nasty what they did here to try to get away with this, knowing that now Turkey is not in the EU, but they are in NATO. I always get that confused.
Yeah, I know they're NATO, but they're not in the EU.
But the fact that they're not in the EU it falls afoul of that whole
agreement
data thing, especially for spyware. And here's another one of those fines that we were talking about. It doesn't matter how many we see because it's never going to stop them.
It really isn't.
But
unless they're huge.
This one is pretty huge.
Wow. Meta slapped with record 1.3 billion EU fine over data privacy. And they will pay it and they will keep doing what they've been doing.
Which is to exfiltrate data from Facebook and their other products to America, even though it's from the EU.
And storing it on American servers, which is not allowed.
They do not care for that. They've
actually wrote legislation about that.
Specific legislation because they knew it was going on a lot. And the surveillance that we've been talking about, the cameras on poles outside your house, the FISA warrants that you'll never know about, constantly
the
everything.
Leaning Tower of FISA.
The government being in bed with all the social media companies. It's never going to stop. And every time that we talk about one of these little things where you're like, well, maybe they should have some copyright protection, realize that it's all part of the same cloth. It's all for the same thing, which is constant, unfettered surveillance.
Anti-Piracy program accused of violating citizens' fundamental rights.
Which is, if they caught you using peer-to-peer stuff, they tracked everything about you with a special government agency that was dedicated to just that. And if they found other things that you were doing wrong, they would prosecute you for them. 12.7 million warning notices. This is part of their escalating thing where it's like, first time they catch you pirating, it's a small fine or a warning or something. Second time, it's a bigger fine, and on and on and on.
Yeah. This is in France, by the way, in case we didn't mention it.
Hyundai is the name of that horrible organization. And Amazon, it seems, has found a little too much resistance in China.
Amazon to close China App Store and further retreat from world's largest internet market. There are too many competitors in China. And they're like, we can't win.
And it's tough to get past the regulators if you're an external company.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit of trade war back and forth going on here. So if you are a Chinese Amazon App Store user, you got till July 15th or July 12th. No, let's see. What was it? Sometime
in July. Not much longer, like a month.
17th, July 17th.
They talked about, too, how like Amazon's been closing a lot of departments, firing a lot of people in different departments. Like... Not too surprising.
It's tough times.
Yeah.
People might not be ordering. My Amazon orders are way down. Way down.
Yeah. I don't tend to order from Amazon a whole lot anyway, unless it's something I can't find locally.
If I see a good deal, I'll go to my website and see if it's close.
Yeah.
And I'll get it if it is.
Yeah, because why pay for Amazon to bring it to your door 3 days later?
Got a sweetheart deal on one of those like giant toilet paper packages the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm good for toilet paper the rest of the year, probably.
When all the pandemic stuff happened, we started buying everything in bulk. And there was a period where like we didn't have to buy paper towels for like a year and a half.
See, I went through that, but then recently I just got into the Cottonelle. Remember when you couldn't get Charmin anymore?
Yeah.
Terrible.
It was a weird time.
Awful stuff. Why even make that? China has also decided to play a little tit for tat with the U.S.
Yeah.
They say, you ban our tech companies? Well, guess what?
China bans Micron chips in escalation of U.S. tech clash. They say that there is some sort of national security thing.
Right.
But we're not particularly forthcoming about what they found.
They say they do security reviews and they found that these products didn't pass. Now, I do find it plausible.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We probably do, but...
Yeah. So probably some truth to that, or some possibility of truth to that. Korea has stepped up and said, we got you, bro. Don't worry. We will make your chips, so you don't need the stupid Americans. China, this is a little bit older story. I think we meant to put this in last week and I forgot it. But China is a big lender, as is the United States, which is what the whole debt ceiling thing. Well, that's the problem. We lend a lot of money. And China does as well. Now, when we lend money to these small countries and they can't pay it back, we're just kind of like, it doesn't matter. We just print it. We don't even care about it. China has a different approach.
In a lot of the world, the clock has hit midnight. China is calling in loans to dozens of countries from Pakistan to Kenya.
China does not negotiate on the rates. Now, China argues, and this is probably true, that the IMF and the World Bank and all those things are American proxies. And when they are trying to demand that China doesn't take payment, they're basically just working with the enemy. That's probably true. And so they say, no, we're not going to do that. We will negotiate directly with our lendees, and you don't get to find out about it. We're going to keep it secret. It's all going to be locked down, which has been true. The Belt and Road traditionally has been used to establish footholds in countries.
Right. They just take back like their ports or something like that.
So all these projects are like dams, water treatment facilities, roads, bridges. So it's little properties that China can then kind of own.
Yeah. They put in their own people to run it. So it doesn't even does it really even help the local economy if it's not making jobs or anything? It's literally just like, no, we'll ship over some Chinese citizens. But
people have made very good arguments that the IMF does the exact same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then the US gets control. There's some nasty stuff you can do in here with like international, like a UN vote. It's like, oh, you owe us this much money? Well, here's how we like you to vote in the upcoming UN election. Ugh. I don't think that's allowed, but do we think it doesn't happen?
Yeah.
In India, they are, it's interesting because in India, apparently during the darkness of the last 2 or 3 years, they didn't want to touch money, but it was a very cash heavy society. And so that pushed people into this.
A digital payments revolution in India.
$1 trillion was put through this one. It's called UPI. That's a third of their GDP. So people are loving it. It's actually, compared to our payment processor programs, it's pretty good because it is somewhat decentralized in the sense that you can switch from like a Google Pay to something else with this system, and you're not married to it. And all your history will go with you.
Which, is that a good or bad thing if all your history goes with you?
Well, QR codes, it's all based on QR codes, and they're apparently on everything in India. So people are really, really into this. Although it's easy to take that away from them and replace it with something else and track everything.
Yeah. Maybe like a good story, but then you see the darkness that could be lurking underneath it.
Almost surely is.
Yeah.
Cash is inconvenient, and I'll admit when I'm
I don't use cash a whole lot
at the
anymore.
grocery store and they start holding out cash, I'm like, oh, come on. But that's a bad way to think about it because freedom is often inconvenient.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. Also, you know what would be inconvenient is not having your phone. Can you imagine it?
Yeah.
But that is truly the only way not to be surveilled around the clock.
Legit app in Google Play turns malicious and sends mic recordings every 15 minutes. This was the iRecorder app.
Which started out, as far as anyone can tell, as an innocent screen recording app that did what it said and worked well. But at some point there was an update. And after that update, it started every 15 minutes. It would record 1 minute of audio and send it back home.
I bet they sold that.
Something happens.
I've never tried to record my screen, but I know on like Apple devices, like the iPad, you can record your screen like it's just built in.
A lot of apps on the App Store replicate things that the phone can already do.
Yeah,
but people don't know
to me. Yeah.
Look for it, so they're just like, oh, I'll go to the App Store.
Strange.
We also put a lot of faith in the fingerprint sensors on our phones because I use it. You know, who doesn't? It's so annoying to have to punch in that code. However, some researchers have been banging on it, and they've found some disturbing things.
Brute force test attack bypasses Android biometric defense.
So how do you do this? Well, actually, it's not like the movies. You cannot cut someone's finger off and do this. Maybe like immediately after you cut it off, you might be able to do it. But at that point, why not just...
You gotta microwave the finger.
I know it's be living tissue. Apparently, it can tell if there's living tissue. I don't know how they do that.
What if you're necrotic?
But what they've done is they've found a way to bypass the whole thing by just pulling down databases of fingerprints, which exist, and you can buy them and say that you're just doing fingerprint research. So you do that, and then you overflow the sensor that checks to like after you know like you get a bad one.
Yeah.
It makes you wait. They turn that off by overflowing it.
Right.
And Android, they can do that to almost every phone. Then you just in rapid fire feed it all these fingerprints till eventually one gets you in.
Didn't this article sort of imply that Apple could probably be done this way too?
Apple, so far, they've not been able to do it too.
Right.
Apple has a much better defense against multiple checks. They might be able to eventually, but for now, Apple wins.
Oh, tragic.
And those Android phones, you might be like, hey, listen, I don't use that fingerprint sensor. I'm no dummy. I lock it down. I delete everything. I don't change my phone at all after I buy it. Well, you're still not safe.
Potentially millions of Android TVs and phones come with malware pre-installed. I can believe it.
Mostly these were the really cheap off-brand phones. And that's why they're cheap, I would imagine, in many cases, because they are definitely infected with malware.
I was surprised how many apps just came pre-installed that I didn't want. on this last phone. Like I had Disney Plus pre-installed. I was like, I don't have this service. I don't want it.
Imagine what they paid for that.
Yeah, oh, probably a lot.
And Microsoft is pointing out again the Chinese Cold War and some of the issues that pop up because of it.
Microsoft warns that China hackers attacked U.S. infrastructure.
What infrastructure? They're not telling us.
I think this did mention what industries, though. It said like maritime industry. Oh, there was a list. I might have read a different article.
It was right around the time of the spy balloon. Apparently they did a big push. I don't see the list of things. They definitely didn't give us
Government organizations were also targeted. There's a paragraph right there in the middle.
Communications, transport, maritime, and government.
Yeah.
So they were not doing anything malicious. This was just kind of like get in and observe and wait.
Which doesn't make you feel real good thinking about,
Well, the question there is, what are they waiting for? Because you would think if a conflict kicked off, that would be the trigger point, right? Just shut everything down.
No electricity, no water.
Kind of what they tried to do in the Russian war. Didn't work out all that great. PyPI is a Python software distribution platform. And you can go on there. It's all open source. You can just submit your stuff. That creates a bit of a problem.
The Python Software Foundation complies with PyPI subpoenas to share some user data.
So the idea here is there are malicious packages on PyPI. The people who submitted them probably, in many cases, did so knowingly. So can the government subpoena Python to give them that information? Their lawyers looked at it and they said, yeah, I don't think there's anything we do here. Ooh. What do they give them? Well, a lot.
Look at that bullet list.
Name, address, connection records, session times, length of service, telephone, payment information. Bad news.
It's a lot of stuff.
And,
did you skip a story?
Did I accidentally? There was another Python story. I messed up the sort a little bit. Yeah. And why would they do this? Why did they invade the poor privacy of the Python people? Well, it turns out for a while now, that's just been a hot dumpster waiting for a spark.
PyPI temporarily pauses new users' projects amid high volume of malware.
So basically there's so much malware being submitted, they don't have time to go through it all the fan.
Oh, the fan really doesn't like that.
Big Python user, the fan. Now I got to try to figure out.
Yeah, this is mixed up. There we go.
And here's an interesting one. Now I put this in the security section just because of the surveillance possibilities here. But we do have, it's interesting if you go to the hospital and you tell them that you're in pain, they're going to show you a little chart. You ever seen the chart with it's got the happy face all the way?
Oh yeah, up to 1 to 10, rate your pain.
That was created by the Sackler family, the OxyContin creators. They did that because they felt that doctors didn't appreciate pain enough. And so they did some research and they figured out that was a good way to get people to overstate their pain, is to give them the little cartoon character. So if you're next time you go to the hospital, check that out. It's still in use today, even though.
Yeah, so I've had that question before.
But maybe it won't be there for long because we don't need it anymore.
First in-human prediction of chronic pain state using intracranial neural biomarkers.
So basically, they can tell how much pain you're in just by scanning you.
I don't think we included it this week, but in a similar note, Neuralink has been approved by the FDA for research. It literally just happened this morning, I think.
Terrifying. Can't wait to have ChatGPT directly into my brain.
Just thank you, Elon Musk. And
you know how they're talking about for the copyright stuff. It's no, just if you find it, just remove it. Just turn it off.
Yeah.
And so it's going to get to a point where any thought I have, it's I don't like Joe Biden. It's this ChatGPT is no, just delete that. And I just never think it. It gets to it before I do. Satellite imagery, the war has really shown how impressive that is.
I still am blown away. Like before Russia actually came into the country, you could see the backup on Google Maps.
Right, yeah. And we had
Like on the traffic cam, yeah.
Real-time surveillance, and a lot of these YouTubers are getting really good at pulling all those maps up and like putting little overlays and stuff on them and tracking things. It's very impressive. And when you get something like that becoming more popular, a business is going to fill that void.
SkyFi lets you order up fresh satellite imagery in real time with a click. This article is it feels a little bit like a sales pitch, but
I think what they're leaving out is that they talk about the bureaucracy and the hoops that you have to jump through.
Right.
I think that's to prevent abuse.
Yeah.
Like the leaders of the world don't want everybody to have satellite surveillance.
Real time, yeah.
They've enjoyed a monopoly on that for a long time. And this would sort of give it to the people, which is what SkyFi wants to do. Easy, one-click billing and delivery of your satellite surveillance.
Though they did mention that government contracting was like a big part of their business model. So they're looking to get in on that.
And it will save money on a government level, I'm sure, to have somebody else do this and just buy it as you need it. Although their contract will be like, just dump all your data constantly to Langley. We want constant everything surveillance. And, now that the world is opened back up, did you see that apparently there's a new version of the vid?
In China.
In China.
Yeah, I also saw that.
That's interesting. But it's just a memory here. We don't even like to think about those times anymore. Maybe it's time to get back into the dating pool, but watch out.
There's catfish. This is catfishing on an industrial scale.
So all these dating sites are running much like they have the fake social media users to try and influence things. Well, they have the fake dating site users who are designed to just give you enough attention to keep you paying. And
this is what the internet's going to become. It's just for bots by bots.
They interviewed several of these people, and inevitably they saw people who they knew IRL. And they were like, oh God, I should tell them, because they were paying money.
Yeah.
Just to be. But they didn't, because they're horrible people. I hate it when they interview people like this and they act like they're doing a good thing now because they're whistleblowers. It's like, what? Huh? No, these are monsters and we should revile them like everybody else. I was looking at the FBI whistleblower panel. I was like listening to what they had to say. And everyone's like, oh my God, they're so brave. It's like, wait a minute. These are all ex-cops, ex-military, ex-FBI. Well, they're horrible people. Why should we say anything good about that?
Though they are going against the FBI, which traditionally doesn't go well.
Only after the FBI absolutely destroyed their lives.
Right.
Before that,
they were okay, yeah.
They were life destroyers until the gun was turned around on them. We should have no sympathy for them. And we should have no sympathy for Kia and Hyundai.
Oh, every week.
They did something very stupid.
Kia and Hyundai agreed to $200 million settlement for making cars viral theft targets.
Now, again, I will say that they're stupid. They did a stupid thing. They should suffer for it. They should probably go out of business for making a decision like this.
Or correct the issue that's causing it to be so easy to steal.
But it ultimately is the fault of the people stealing cars.
Both can be true. And they both should be punished.
But if we had a society where no one stole cars, then this thing wouldn't matter. We'd never know.
Well, that's kind of silly, isn't it? To just expect
silly
that?
To expect that, yes,
Yeah.
but it's also silly to ignore. It's like just to absolve it's like, oh, well, that crime was too easy. Of course they did it.
Well,
how could you not?
Just punish both.
And Google has some new top-level domains that have people worried because if you know anything about cybersecurity, seeing these 4 characters in a row would put you on edge.
Google pushes .zip and .move domains onto the internet, and the internet pushes back. .zip in particular would make me very nervous.
Move, not mov, huh?
Oh.
Movie? Yeah, so both files...
Words you never say out loud.
Both files are ways that you could put malicious stuff on a victim's computer if they were to access it directly. But now that is going to be a valid web address. So how does security software filter against it?
It doesn't. And then we're going to end up with a lot of problems.
We don't need it. They pointed out that like, oh, these are valuable because it's like you have a zippy product and you have a product that's fast. It zips and moves. Or maybe something about movies.
I guess. Maybe studios will want move. Mauve. Mauvey.
Bad idea.
.zip is especially strange to me.
Also,
Who wants .zip? Even like just outside of all that, like .zip, that just sounds like malware. Like it just like .zip, my small business .zip. Can't put that on a business card.
I regret that we did not ask, engagement challenge. I shouldn't be mad about this because we'll get a lot of comments, but yeah, Wendell's not here because he's on a trip. So he won't be here for the next two either. For those of you who boycott in that situation. I'm
sure that you guys will see, if you're following him on Twitter, all kinds of photos this week. So
does he tweet a lot?
Not super often, but like when he's on a big trip.
What are you talking about? He tweets constantly.
Not constantly. He's on Twitter all the time, but he doesn't tweet a ton. But he'll probably tweet a ton this week. Anyway, there'll also be some content this week for that. So anyway, bye!